How do you guys do the fancy backgrounds?
Because I am fancy, my friend. Look at Matt Aaron here. We've got him here live. That's a huge lie. Not even remotely live. We're definitely recording this. We were live at one point in time, and we are not live anymore. We've got Matt talking about his 2000 Necron army, his tabletop plus army from concept to tabletop in less than 6 weeks. And I didn't believe you when you came to me with this concept because I said, Matt, how are you going to do this? You are known as the guy that has won several of the awards. Let's talk about the fact that we stayed together at LVO this year and we needed a dolly to carry all of the trophies you won this year. ITC Hobby Track 2022, 2023 with your Death Guard. That is how many? Tell me a little bit. We've got the set up the situation here. I've got a slide up for you, but tell me about this because there's a lot that went into this. And then you told me that you're going to get an army done in 6 weeks. So set the stage, and then tell me about what you're now going to do.
Yeah. I've been playing Death Guard almost exclusively for about 4 years now, and it's taken about 4 years to actually reach the point where I got second at Las Vegas. So I'm really happy about that and give me enough points to win the hobby track again. So after, spending so many hours with them, I decided, I think it's time to take a break and kind of put them off to the side a little bit. So they always have a special place in my heart, but now I'm at a point where hey, maybe I should start another army. And we have Adepticon coming up. So what more to motivate someone to get an army done in about 6 to 7 weeks than a big event coming up. So I thought it'd be a kind of a fun idea of what can you do to, build an army quickly that's competitive, but also will check a lot of boxes regarding paint scores and rubrics and things like that.
So we know that it's going to be a good army. So we basically want to make this the Dark Mech army. It's 2,000 points in Necrons. It's not your space pirate orcs, which going to take 3-ish years, you think, to rock that out? So that's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, it took about 3 years to get the Death Guard good, and then I think another year to make him great. So, so my next, my long-term project is going to be kind of a pirate theme orc army, but I really want to go heavy into details. And since there's 1 billion models, I'm like, hey, is there an army to kind of bridge the two, to bridge me from specifically looking at what do I find myself wanting to still play with models. So I had to get an army on the board very quickly and not, waste 3 years and not play anything for that amount of time. So I wanted to find something that I could get on the tabletop relatively quickly to help bridge between when I finish the works and now.
Let's talk about this, the mission. So we want to conceptualize, build, and paint a 2,000 point army in 6 weeks. Again, you just said a 4-year army and a 3-year projected army, and now you want to do this one in 6 weeks. You want to do a backwards plan. So tell me about the Army 101. What are we doing to make an army happen in 6 weeks? Because you told me we're going to do an army in 6 weeks. It's going to happen. I said I of course include me, even though I'm doing none of this. How are you making this happen? Tell me about it.
Yeah.
What went into this? Because I want to know the journey. This is literally from step 0 till we're going to do this until you get it done. We're going to try to do weekly until we get this on. Tell me what your plan was. How are you going to make this happen?
Yeah, I think having someone like you kind of gently kick me in the butt every time I see you, hey, Matt, how long does it take you to build an army? How long does it take you to build a unit or paint a unit? And I said, well, it takes just as much time to convert it in my book than it does, to paint it. So you're like, well, how are you staying on top of the competitive edge? And I said, well, I kind of don't then, because I'm skewing more toward hobby. But I'm at a point now where maybe I can make something that does keep up with the meta, but at the same time can look good. So I'm like, okay, what's the plan? And I think whenever you're planning something, you have to know timelines. And for us, we only have about 6-7 weeks when I started this project to Adepticon, which I absolutely love that event. Had a blast there. My buddy Chris and I, we won the Long War doubles after tying for so many years. So I'm like, this year, let's see how we can actually, maybe go for best overall at the GT, hopefully. But you have to have a really good looking army that also carries a lot of weight to it. So you get a backwards plan, because number one thing here is time is your number one enemy here. You will bleed and left and right. So you got to be on top of that. So you got to set up a little thing. So
Would you say that you don't want to be chasing waterfalls? That's all I'm saying.
yeah. So what I would decide to do was kind of think of, all right, what's my goal? My goal is essentially to build an army that's competitive, but also looks okay. Because it won't win best painted, but maybe you can get up there with some tips and tricks, and that's kind of the idea. So I said, okay, what can I do that's quick? Well, I also have a lot of extra spare Necron bits from a dark mech army that I was building. Genuinely, I have it now. I've never played Necrons, and this dark mech army is something I banded a couple of years ago to focus on Death Guard. But I have a ton of the kits, which are impossible to find now. So why not do that? Because Necrons are very quick to paint if you do more of a simplistic scheme. But you can do some things that are really quick to kind of add a little bit more pizzazz to them. And this is why I kind of say this, and I think I'm quoting Brad Chester: is don't go chasing waterfalls. Don't do something that's not your home, that does not feel comfortable for you. So don't go chasing eBay. Don't go chasing wild prices pending, double MSRP for things. Maybe there's things that maybe you have a kit and you can make, and you have 3 of the model, maybe you can 6 of them with some bits you have lying around. So that's what I did here. I said, hey.
So let's talk about the army theme itself, the theme that you thought was good. And it is a combination. It's simple enough yet cool enough for you to want this. So tell me about the Grim Reaper army theme, and then we'll talk about the paint scheme after that.
Yeah. So there I'm digging into this big box I have full of all this Agmet bits and units, as well as Necron units, and I have a bunch of Age of Sigmar Night Haunt units, because I was going to make, again, this dark mech theme, and I thought it would kind of pair really, really well. Well, hey, I have a lot of kits already here. Why go buy some new kits? And as I was kind of developing this list with some support from your neighborhood local GT winner here and world champion Team USA, Brad Chester, kind of working with him to kind of say, hey, what's actually really good right now? So you really have to say, okay, what do I have and how do I fill the gap? So if I have enough bits there and I'm already taking the Nightbringer, well, maybe I can actually add, some various bits to these Necron models to actually really make them stand out. And this is something that anyone can do for a new army. You could have a Space Marine army. Just take something from Age of Sigmar or not something else. Take some random bits and kind of throw them in there to kind of create a new theme. Doesn't take much, but you actually can get a lot of style points and a lot of extra points on painting rubrics if you just have a few extra bits here that kind of sell an overall theme. And also real cool, the Grim Reaper. So I'm kind of going for more of a Void Reaper army, is I think I'm going to call it, with this project to kind of create, these Necrons, which are very mechanical, but by adding cloth and things like that, you'll really make it really stand out from the million other Necron armies that will be there.
So tell me about, give me just an example of, you say add conversions that you can add quickly. What is that kind of thing that you're planning on that you would give to people that want to do that? Give me an example of any of that.
Yeah, I mean, this army was kind of really highly thought out. I said, okay, I have 6-7 weeks. How much time can I spend to planning? Got to spend a few days planning it, and then you got to spend some time converting it and then painting it. So in the conversion, something I can do pretty quickly. So a quick example would be you can take the extra weapons off of wraiths and turn those into antennae for the wraiths, or take some extra spiky bits you have laying around. And kind of maybe make some custom weapons a little bit. And you can also do that to help, instead of saying, hey, this is just one weapon, by adding a few extra bits, you can actually say, oh, it's actually this other weapon, if maybe you don't have them, or a box only comes with one of that specific weapon type. But for this army, I'm going to be adding some various, some will be an actual primarily Age of Sigmar Night Haunt model with some Necron bits, and then some of them will be full on Necron base with some Age of Sigmar kind of cloaks and things like that added, which don't take a lot of work, but actually can really sell the effect. Takes a little bit of cutting, but you'll be surprised if you sit down for maybe an hour or two. What are some things you can come up with?
Can do. I like that a ton, because I'm a huge conversion guy. My color scheme can't see everything, but I love those conversions. I also tell me about why did the Nightbringer make this thing come to happen for you? Is that the centerpiece model that we're talking about here? Yeah.
So I was looking for the army itself. So you really have to create a list and then see what models you have, and then fill in the gaps where you can. So you know, it's going to go for either you had to have a Satan in your army. Really, they're just way too good for their points not to include a Necron army. So it really was just kind of something that kind of came together. Well, I had some ideas for a night, you know, this dark mech army, but wait, maybe I can use those for just purely Necrons now. So a lot of this was some ideas I previously had that I kind of abandoned that I'm now re-energized and kind of added a little bit more of a purely Necron flair. So yeah, so with having the Nightbringer, I think that you could really just have him be a solo model, but also how many people have a Grim Reaper style or more of a Void Reaper style army? Not many, right? So it's a good way of also standing out by just adding a few extra bits.
I like that. Tell me about this paint scheme. So we're saying the basic mode is prime silver, wash black, dry brush, bright silver, paint energy, neon green, purple, orange, yellow, red. That's the basic mode. Tell me how that's the basic mode, Matt. Come on.
Yeah.
Tell me what you're thinking here. How's that go about? Tell me a little bit about this.
So Necron building is actually quite tedious. Anyone who's built Tomb Blades will tell you they're really finicky. So if you want to just whip it together, you know, not cover any mold lines, you know, not cover the sprue where the sprue gets clipped. If you just want to assemble a quick Necron arm, you can. If you just want to physically get on the tabletop, you can maybe do that in a long weekend. Because all you do is spray paint it silver. Don't have to wash it. You can maybe dry brush it and just add whatever specific color you want and get on the table. The problem is you're going to look like every other Necron player in there. But guess what? We have 6 weeks. Let's utilize that full amount of time to add some extra flair to get those hobby points to kind of go for best overall. So I wanted to come up with a paint scheme that really stood out uniquely. So you knew it was Necrons, but really stood apart in a good way from other armies. So by having some of the bits of, you know, the organic cloth, you know, you can have that next to the contrast that is the metals and silvers. It will itself create some really cool, interesting contrast already built in. But I think I decided to say, hey, just after looking, doing a little bit of research and downtime during a lunch break, hey, what's a paint scheme that I really like, that really stands out? And I came across one that I think is going to really do the army justice, but it won't take a lot of extra time. I do have an airbrush, so I'm able to kind of really cheat in that way. If you're doing a Necron army, you definitely should have an airbrush or borrow an airbrush from your buddy for the weekend just to get all the silvers down, and you'll really thank yourself later because hand brushing all that silver can be really hard and also look really clunky if you just straight on paint silvers over a whole army. It'll look really again, you get an uneven finish, which no one wants. So aside, instead of going for the standard neon green, which has been my whole Death Guard army, maybe I can go for silver base, but adding some purple hues to it. So the shadows will be more purpley just to create some interest, you know, to kind of make those shadows delicious, if you will. That's what you always want to do. Instead of just going like white to black and then having a color in the middle, well, I can maybe have, you know, silver, but then have the shadows be purple, or have the highlights actually be like a really like light emerald green. So there's different ways you can play around with it. So the silvers with an airbrush with only an extra hour of work, I can create more purple hues in there. And then I'm going to go back in some of the armor panels and then stipple on using Darren Latham's technique of, you know, just adding a little bit more texture to the armor plates a little bit by just quick stippling. So it's a quick way of adding texture in freehand while also being messy, which is something we're going to have to go for. We have to go for speed and quickness over perfect lines. So yeah, so that's a great thing you can do. Now, if you're an average painter, or you're looking for someone to take the next step, there's tons of different ways, especially using the Necron army as an example. Just use silver as the example. That's my base color throughout the whole army. Well, maybe there's different ways I can use contrast paints or dilute the contrast paint to be more like a wash. Maybe I can throw that on some armor plates. So it still has the metallic underneath, but it'll shine through a color filter like purple, green, yellow, red. So there's ways that you can easily get an army on the tabletop doing all silver, get playing, get reps, but then go back and add some colors here and there. So I know for this army and kind of planning, conversions will take me a solid third of the time, and then painting 2/3 of the time. So I know the little details are really going to hold me back. So I have to kind of say, hey, at a certain point of a trigger point where I have to to get to a point of painting because the details will be really, really
I'm
difficult.
going to go into the timeline in just a minute, but what I wanted to stop on for the uninitiated painter is what are the things that you think are the most important if I want to make this army my own? I want to make Brad's Necrons. I want to make them a little bit different. What in your list here, in your paint scheme, are kind of the things, if I only have a truncated timeline, what are the things that you think are the most important to make an army pop on the tabletop? Maybe not if I picked it up, and gave it but just from a cursory glance, tabletop style, what is the most important to you, at least? You know what I mean? What draws you into an army that you would spend more time on?
That's a great question. Really, really great question. The quick answer is don't look like everyone else's army. I know, like, Ultramarines are blue, but maybe you could create them in an off shade of blue or make them maybe like a purpley blue. So they're still blue, but try to go a shade away. Like my Death Guard were turquoise, which has green in it, but also blue. So you have to look different than everyone else. You have to stand out, but in a good way. Don't just go for tacky colors. Go for a color you like, but stand out by having your normal army, but use a different color scheme that people aren't used to. You can use the lore as an example, or maybe a theme you want, or you can just use a color scheme that you really like, or maybe you're really big into sports. Go Bills. Maybe you can use like red, white, and blue for a Necron army or something like that. So you really have to stand out in a good way by having colors that are different than the standard version and also colors that are complementary. That's really important because you want to stand out in a good way. If you have a really contrasting colors not in a good way, that'll stand out in a bad way. So really look at a color wheel, pick two colors, and kind of go from there. But if you have two big colors in your army, you'll pretty much be able to get away with a lot as long as they're on the opposite sides of the color wheel. So yeah, kind of start there. But I think number one thing you have to do is you have to not look like everyone else. And you have to actually have some contrast in terms of dark is your primary color, and the second color should be a little bit brighter, vice versa.
I like it. Tell me about this timeline that you're going to get this done with. We've got the 7-week time slot now, but tell me how we're going to make this work.
Yeah. So we decided, was like, hey, what can we do to kind of capture a project in motion? And we're already several weeks in, but I think the first week was like, hey, make a plan, make a plan. If you don't make a plan, you're going to get crushed by it and then not have any army for Adepticon. So one was making a plan. It was then ordering some units that I needed. And, by winning, second overall, I had some extra prize support. So I was able to kind of utilize that toward, getting a few missing units that I didn't already have. So another big part of it too was just the first week was just start cutting sprues and cleaning mold lines. That's a big thing that you can do is clean your mold lines, especially when two parts meet and you have that seam in the edge. You can just take a knife and just cover over it and kind of cover that up. You'll be shocked how much cleaner your army will look. But take the time to really clean those bits if you have it to really make it pop and sing. So yeah, second week is really also again finish the cleaning. Really spending that extra time. And I think actually we're into week 3 now where I started assembling. So now once I have all the bits clean, now I can start putting them together. So that's where I'm currently at in this time.
With your assembly, do you assemble the whole models then paint, or do you paint partial models depending on the difficulty of getting around them? What is your style on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's user specific. If you have the time, some assemblies can be great. If you don't have the time, just put them all together. I'm a big fan. For my Death Guard, I had to do one unit at a time because it took me so long. But I think for this army, I'm going to make sure everything's built first. So that way I can have a similar cohesive theme. Because if I start painting something and I want to go back and add it based on a bit I had over here, I'm going to be stuck. So I want to make sure the whole army is built first, and then one day prime, one day silver, and then I can start adding, pieces for the details. But if I can, I definitely break them down into sub-assemblies, especially big pieces of armor, hard to reach places. And then for these Necrons, there's a big like shoulder pads and big armor plating. So keep those separate so it's easier to get in there with an airbrush, and then you can also paint those separately. But if you have the time to make sub-assemblies, it's easier to get to, but at the same time, you have to spend time putting them back together.
Now, tell me about these. Do you typically make your own bases, order bases? Because I looked through the timeline and I was looking at some of the stuff. That object source lighting. See, I know a couple of these terms. I'm a magic painter. But do you like to get bases that go with uh, your
Mhm.
scheme, or do you typically buy a base that you think is really cool and then just put a little bit of your own hobby on it? Which do you typically go with? Like, what's your base signature style?
Yeah, I think it's really what the project needs. Like I have purely resin bases for other armies. Other ones I have them scratch built up. I think for this army, if I have enough time, like we have Monday off, right? Monday coming up here. If you're watching this, it's President's Day. So maybe that's a day where I can sneak in a whole day of just doing bases. And I think for this army, I'll have enough time just to start with plastic black bases, adding some cork bits, and then I'm gonna take just like a piece of plastic card and throw it and cut it and to make it look like it's like a Necron ruins almost. So you just go ahead and stick those on the models really quickly. So that's easy to do. And then you can add some glue here or there. So it doesn't take very long. And I think it's worth it to go on Amazon. You can easily find sheets of cork, some PVA glue and then some other glue to really kind of just quickly build something. Doesn't have to be perfect. Your bases are supposed to be quick. No one's really paying attention to them, but these are some ways you could add a few extra elements to really make it stand out. And so that's what I'm gonna do with this one is what's am I gonna do very quickly? Just pieces of cork and then little pieces of plastic card on top. And then when I go to paint, I can just really quickly dry brush the rock to make it look like rubble. I can use pigments or wash to make it look like it's dusty. And then if I have some time after I put the models on, again, you're kind of building in some points where if I have time, I can do this. But if I don't have time, no one's going to know it wasn't done. But I can go back and add some like Necron freehand on those like blank pieces of plastic card. So that's what I'm doing for this army because it calls for it. My Death Guard started, the base of it was resin, and then I put cork on top of it because I like the weight that the resin base gave you on a model. So I'm going to be curious to see how these Necrons work, because, especially the rates because they're still top heavy, and the way that I position a lot of them to create some variation takes 30 seconds a model, but it goes pretty far.
I love the Wraith thing because we were putting them together this weekend, and Pajamas told me, I don't understand how this model exists. It just breaks in half. So, give me some of these important considerations.
Yeah, I
These
think
are big
it's
things. This is like a big project that you have limited time on. Give me these are your important considerations. Tell me exactly what the main things that other people can learn from your journey doing this.
Yeah, I think I'm finding myself in a position a lot of people do. If a big event, maybe it's your local RTT or it's a big GT coming up with your area. You want to go with your friends and you really want to, take the time with what you have to really stand out. So I think a number of people are like feeling the time crunch to keep a competitive army on the tabletop. But how do I actually make it look good? Make it look good. And there's a lot of things you can do subtly to really make it pop in a unique way. So, number one thing you have to know is your hard time limits and your soft time limits. So, know where it's like a no joke date that I have to stop converting, I have to start painting, or else I'm going to leave myself no time to paint. Definitely know that. But also know your soft limits. Like, where are some places I can cut corners or something I can go back and revisit. So converting, you can't go back and revisit it once you start painting. But maybe I want to add some scarabs to these bases. Let's put that off to the side. It's a soft time limit. Maybe there's some extra things I could add later on that don't necessarily have to be on the model just yet. So know where sub-assemblies are, know those type of points of where I can, if I'm running late or running behind, things will always happen. Know where I can kind of squish and steal time back from the back end. Always helps to backwards plan off of an event, know when the date is and then work your way back, know things are coming up in your life. Like I have a big conference I have to go to, so I know that week's pretty much a dead week. So don't count that, give yourself a little bit of room and know, hey, life's going to happen, mistakes are going to happen, your models are going to arrive late or you break a bunch because the cat knocks them over, who knows. Just know that you have to build in a little bit of squish time in case something goes wrong. You have that as a backup. I think thirdly is set realistic goals. It took me 4 years to get my Death Guard army. I only got second place at Vegas, which I'm extremely proud of. And that there's a lot of big backstory to that Death Guard army. It's definitely it's a community project in the sense that they motivated me to reach that point, but it takes a long time. And I'm a pretty okay painter, in terms of my technique. And yes, I'm kind of working toward more Golden Demon entries coming up here as I make this next leap. But for now, I think there's definitely an appreciation for understanding what you can do and how you can do it, and knowing that you got to keep things realistic, that you will not have a Golden Demon entry in one day, you just won't. But no, hey, what's a good realistic thing that I can do? And for me, I can get this army on the tabletop all painted silver with some highlights. I can do that for sure. But maybe I want to take it next level. What's a realistic, achievable goal that's possible if I push myself a little bit? And that's what I find myself doing now.
I like that. One of my things that I really liked when I first looked at this and you sent it over was like going to the gym, have a hobby buddy to help you with accountability and motivation. And I like that a lot because we're doing this as the journey. We're going to do this weekly. We're putting this out. Each week we'll see where you are, where we are. So I am accidentally the world's worst hobby buddy in the fact that I'm the worst hobbyer. But I love that in the fact that I think that having somebody that you're showing where are you, keeping you held up accountable, but it also means that you're staying on your realistic goals that you set in the first place and not going, because I know a lot of you, actually, as you get better and better in the hobby, a lot of times you can get yourself stuck on, I want to make this one model amazing. And you're like, yeah, I got 40 other models I need to do. And keeping yourself on track for that has to be difficult for you. But I love the idea of a hobby buddy looking over, where are you, what's going on. Also, let's be honest, it's nice to get a little encouragement to go, hey, this is where I am. Oh man, that is looking significantly better. Also, to everybody watching this, give your friends, your family, your significant others that are doing hobby projects, give them a little encouragement on it. It goes a long way after you've had all the mistakes happen, after you didn't like the conversion, after you had to repaint things. It's nice to hear, you know what? That's looking pretty great. You're making a lot of progress. I like where you are. Give yourself, everybody, a little bit of mojo. It helps. It's a community. We're supposed to help each other.
Yeah, I think those last 2 points on the slide really kind of hit home the community aspect, because you don't want to just lock yourself away and make something that you think is really cool, but then no one else likes. It's really helpful to have that feedback. And in our hobby, it should be fun. It should be, this process of building should be challenging. But once you achieve a goal, it should actually feel rewarding, but not crushing you and not fun. Some people love the painting, like myself, and the hobby side of it, and the game side is like a secondary to it. Some people hate hobbying and just prefer to play the whole time. But most of us find ourselves somewhere in the middle. But it can definitely help to have something motivating you. You got to find that intrinsic motivation, that thing that really pushes you. Put a picture of like the cat hanging from the clothesline that says hang in there, whatever you need to motivate you. And for me, I know it's helpful to have another person in that fight with you, in that challenge with you. So having someone like accountability buddy, we're way more likely, we know this per research, you're more likely to go to the gym if you know your buddy's also going to the gym. And then once you're at the gym, you're also pushing each other, called social facilitation theory. If you're going to push a heavy weight and you're doing it next to someone, well, you're actually push a little bit more weight just through competition. So now that you're competing against someone as opposed to them, setting healthy goals for you and also motivating you and challenging you in great, great ways. So this series is kind of my own way of motivating myself to get a new army after all these years, but also get something that I'm going to be really proud to show off on, some other ways you can do to stay engaged is, routine check-ins. I find it helpful just to listen to music. I listen to lore. I found out way more about the Necrons. I thought I knew a lot about them. Turns out I don't. So listen to podcasts. YouTube's great for listening to podcasts or different, not only about the army, but the faction, or just listening to pure music, something that keeps you moving. don't watch TV, don't watch videos because it's really going to slow you down. If you're really in a time crunch, really buckle down. But music can always, always motivate people, which we know also know per research. One last tip, in terms of when you're doing a project like this, that can be helpful to batch paint, batch paint. Like you said, don't make one model perfect. Always save your characters till the end. That's your dessert. That's your cherry on top. That's like you've done the hard workout. Now you can go have a great meal. So save your characters to the end, because that's the thing that's going to motivate you to get all the troops done, all your heavy hitters done. And at the very end, now you can really enjoy yourself and put that time into it. But if you spend too much time on one model, the rest of the models are going to look terrible. The army's going to look inconsistent, and that will stand out in a really bad way.
Especially if you have that one amazing character, then the rest of the army wasn't enough. You're like, oh, so you were going to make the army look like that, but you didn't? Let's rock and roll. I appreciate having you on. We're going to have this, like I said, this is the journey to Adepticon. And we're going to do this every week. And I loved having you on, brother. Until next time, until next week, stay milky.